Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Good morning, everyone. Today we are going to continue with the lesson from the place where we stopped last time. Actually, there was an issue in my computer, so I couldn't send the handout today. It was done, but at the final moment, some issue happened. Anyway, we'll try to do the lesson without a handout because it's something quite not very advanced. We are going to enumerate some of the facts, and most probably I'll be able to give the handout by next week of the previous lesson as well. So far we are in the topic of Chittaja Rūpas. Chittaja Rūpas are the matter that is produced by consciousness and mental factors in beings. Rūpa of a being is fourfold, as Rūpa produced by karma, Rūpa produced by consciousness, Rūpa produced by the heat element, Tejo Dhatu, and the Rūpa produced by the nutriment, Oja, of the food that we eat. Out of them, the relationship between Rūpa and the Nama can be obviously seen by the appearance or arising of Chittaja Rūpas in living beings. This can also be termed as the bridge between the physicality and the non-physicality within a living being. Because one of the biggest problems that we have in philosophy is the problem of interaction. That is, how could a physical thing and a non-physical thing could interact on each other? How could a non-physical element cause movements in a physical element, and how could an impact on a physical element could cause some results or cause some differences or affect the non-physical element. But in Theravada teachings, Chittaja Rūpas is not an explanation on how this interaction is explained. It is a notion that is found in the teachings that Chitta mentality and materiality are connected to each other. So with the Chittaja Rūpas, we talk how mentalities are affecting the Rūpa by discussing about Vattu Rūpas and other factors, other notions. We discuss how materiality is affecting the non-material chittas. So our today's lecture would be about Chittaja Rūpas, because till now we discussed what are the consciousness that have the capacity to produce Rūpas, Chittaja Rūpas. We talked about 75 chittas, if you remember, except the 10 Vijnana and the 4 Rūpa Vipakas. They have the capacity, these 75 have the capacity to produce Chittaja Rūpas, except while they are arising as the Patisandhi Chitta and the Chuti Chitta, and also this phenomenon is seen only while they arise in the Panchavokara realm, not in the Chatuvokara or Arupa realms. In the Asanya Satta realm, we do not have any Rūpa, Chittaja Rūpas, because there is no consciousness in that realm. So today's topic would be Chittaja Rūpas. Chittaja Rūpas. This is the subtopic that we have been discussing so far, but when we explain Chittaja Rūpas, we need to study what are the Chitta, and then Chittaja Rūpas produced by them, then the Chitta Santati, then we Chittaja Rūpa Santati, pardon, Chittaja Rūpa Santati, right? And before that Chittaja Kalapas we have to study. We need to learn Chittaja Kalapas, Chittaja Kalapa, and Chittaja Santati, right? So now with 2 lectures we discuss what are the 2 or 3 lectures, what are the chittas that has the capacity to produce Chittaja Rūpas. Now today we focus on Chittaja Rūpas themselves. There are 15 Chittaja Rūpas according to Theravada teachings. Chittaja Rupas, 15. What are they? Avinibhoga Rupas. Avinibhoga Rupas, we have already discussed about them in detail. They are the 4 great elements, Patavi, Apo, Tejo, Vayu. Then Vanna, Gandha, Rasa, Oja. These are the 8 Avinibhoga. Patavi, Apo, Tejo, Vayu, Vanna, Gandha, Rasa, Oja. They are produced by all 4 types of material causes. Then we have Saddha Rupa. Saddha Rupa is the sound. Saddha Rupa. Because sound can also be produced by Utu. So at the end of while we are discussing the Utuja Rupas, we shall in detail talk about sound. Then we have Paricheda Rupa. Paricheda Rupa is either the gap between 2 kalapas or the limitation of a 1 kalapa, the boundaries of a 1 kalapa. Paricheda Rupa. Then we have 2 Vikara Vinyati. 2 Vinyati Rupas, which we shall discuss in another few weeks under the topic of Chittaja Rupas. The intimations, bodily and verbal intimations. While we make physical movements and while we utter words, this Vinyati affects, forms or the shapes, the way of our behavior and also the speech that we utter. Then 3 Vikara. 3 Vikara Rupa. Vikara Rupas are Lahuta, Muduta, Kammanta, the lightness of 4 great elements, the adaptability of 4 great elements, and the softness of the 4 great elements. So these are the 15 Rupas. 8, 1, 1, 2, 3. So we have 10 and 15. These are the 15 Rupas produced by Chitta. A thing, a fundamental that we should learn is, we should be aware is, now Chitta normally, now if we take this as the human being, there are 75 Chittas that has the capacity to produce Chittaja Rupas. They produce Chittaja Rupas. This 75 is arrived by 89 minus 10 Vijnana. 10 Vijnana are the Chakku, Sota, Gana, Jivha, Kaya Vijnanas, the respective 5 sense Vijnanas. Then we also minus 4 Arupa Vipaka. Why did we minus Arupa Vipaka? Because Arupa Vipakas always arise in the Arupa realm and there is no Rupa in the Arupa realm. Then this is how we arrived at the 75 Chittas. So among the 75 even, we have to minus Patisandhi Chitta, because we discuss Patisandhi Chittas. Then before that, we need to know these 75 Chittas produce Chittaja Rupas only while they are in the Panchavokara realm. In the Panchavokara realm. In the Panchavokara realm. While they arise in the Panchavokara, not in the Arupa realm. Panchavokara realm means the realm in which we can find all the 5 aggregates. Then, even while they are in the Panchavokara realm, we have to still exclude Patisandhi Chitta. All Patisandhi Chittas do not produce Chittaja Rupas. Then we have to also exclude Chuti Chitta. Chuti Chittas, according to some commentators, do not produce Chittaja Rupas. So we exclude these 2. So then we get a certain amount of Chittas that have the capacity to produce Chittaja Rupas. The thing is, all these 75 are Mano Vijnana. Mano Vijnana. We haven't studied it yet in detail. Mano Vijnana means 79 Chittas excluding the 10 Dvipancha Vijnana. Dvipancha Vijnana are I think we have discussed briefly them in the first few lectures of our series. 10 Vijnanas are the eye consciousness, ear consciousness, nose consciousness, tongue consciousness and body consciousness that arise as both wholesome and unwholesome resultants. So they are excluded. Remaining are Manoviññāna. We have 79 Manoviññāna. By reducing 4 Arupa, we get 75 here. That's how we arrived at 75. All these 75 associate a heart base. HEART, heart base. They associate a heart base. With having gained the support of the heart base, Manoviññāna is capable of producing the Chittaja Rupas. Now, think about ourselves. Now, according to the teachings, we know where the heart is located. Inside the heart, I think we discussed about this in the Kammaja Rūpa lectures. Inside the heart, there is a subtle Rūpa that can become the base for the consciousness. We call it Hadevattu. Hadevattu. The term itself is not found in the Tipitaka. This is a term used by the commentators. In the Patthana, we find only the base upon which the consciousness depends. Heart base is where the Manoviññāna arises, right? Scientifically, it can be highly challenged because, according to them, if there is a consciousness, it should be located or it should be depending mostly on the brain rather than the heart, right? So I'm not going into that debate or explanation here, but according to Theravada teachings, it is found in the heart. It is found in the heart. Now, it is within the physical heart, but it is not the physical heart. It is not the flesh that we consider as heart. It's not the lump of flesh. It's not the muscle which we call heart. This is something, according to teachings, something that is found in the blood inside the heart, which is a subtle Rūpa that does not flow out from the heart. That does not flow out from the heart. Now this heart base, now consciousness arises here. Consciousness arises here. If you take this is consciousness, Chitta, right? Cetasika also including. Now this is located here. It is depending on the heart base, but it is not only producing Rūpa around this area. Consciousness, when producing Chittaja Rūpas, produces all over the body. Now this is a very strange phenomenon. It produces all over the body, not only the area proximity to the consciousness. It's not only in that area, but the entire body. Now this is something philosophically, this can be really challenged. But anyway, according to the teachings, we say the consciousness has a certain capacity which we call as anubhava. Though it is an immaterial thing, it can affect the body, not only the physical thing upon which it depends. Now, consciousness depends on a heart base. This is the, if we call it, this is, if we consider this is the heart base, and consciousness arises on it. Surely it is logical to assume that the consciousness affects the heart base because it depends on it, and the nature of the heart base also affects the consciousness that we found in the previous in a previous lecture as well. Because when the Patisandhi Chitta, though the Patisandhi Chitta associates heart base, since it doesn't get the support of a heart base that had already arisen before, Pure Jatapachya, Patisandhi Chitta is not capable of producing Chittaja Rūpas. So the support given by heart base to consciousness is obvious within the doctrine, and also consciousness affects the heart base, especially when we are talking about kilesas. We say it burns or it affects the associating base. So this is obvious. This means this is logical to assume. But the thing is, this consciousness not only affects the heart base, but the entire body of the being in which it arises. The entire body of the being in which it arises. So each and every corner of the body is affected by this chitta. So the capacity of this is the capacity of a chitta to affect the entire body. We call it the Anubhava. Anubhava. Anubhava is a might, or the here we should not consider it as the glory. It is a capacity, a special capacity of the consciousness. It's a special capacity of the consciousness that is not found in other realities. So consciousness, being an immaterial reality, can affect not only the materiality upon which it depends, but also the entire body. So what is the limitation of the body? There's another question. What is the limitation of this? My robe is on my body, but Chitta is not affecting that. It affects the body only. So body means the thing that is of a living being that is produced by karma. Produced by karma means affected by the karma. Affected by the karma. But here there is something to be known here, some subtle point. In our body, now think about a woman who has long hair, for instance. There are roots of the hair. According to teachings, these roots are still considered as all the four elements of four types of rupas are found in these roots of the hair. But the thing that comes out, now if we consider this is the root which is inside the skin, the part which is outside is considered as anupadinaka. Anupadinaka means they do not contain kammaja rupas. They do not contain kammaja rupas. Chitta does not affect these areas. It only affects the Rūpa that contains kammaja rupa. This is the limitation. This is the limitation. This is the limitation. So here the point is, consciousness not only affects the Rūpa on which it depends, but also the entire body of the living being. The effects of Chittaja Rupas can be seen in certain occasions, like when we have strong anger, we can see the effects of consciousness into the Rūpa. When we have strong lust, is obviously seen. When even certain physical changes do happen in our body. When we are in a good high concentration, yes, that is also obviously seen. Our body is pieces with the high concentration. So these are the effects seen by a consciousness upon the body. Consciousness upon the body. There are two ways. Normally there are two ways the consciousness, chitta, can affect the Rūpa of a living being. First is called Paccājāta Paccaya. Paccājāta Paccaya. Paccājāta Paccaya, we shall learn it in the lesson of causality, that chittas, mentalities that have arisen before, the Rūpa that has arisen before the consciousness, Rūpa that has arisen before the consciousness are supported by consciousness that arises after it. Paccājāta Paccaya. Because of these consciousness that arise later, the Rūpa is strengthened and the generation of Rūpas lasts long. It's called Paccājāta Paccaya. In the Paccājāta Paccaya also we say it's not the consciousness affects the Rūpas of the entire body. The second way how chitta is affecting the Rūpa is through Chittaja Rūpas. Chittaja Rūpas. This is also a little bit similar to that of Paccājāta Paccaya. Not only the area where chitta arises, not only the proximity of the chitta, but also the entire body. It is obviously seen while when certain emotions arises within us, and also certain spiritual attainments during spiritual experiences. And even, but according to the literature, it's not only such intense moment or obvious moments, but whenever these 75 consciousness consciousnesses arise in the Panchavokara realm, other than on these two occasions of Patisandhi and Chuti, Chittaja Rupas always arise in our body. Even while we are at deep sleep. The Bhavanga consciousness produces Chittaja Rupas, and those Chittaja Rupas are different from the Chittaja Rupas that we have while we are awake. That's why we see a huge difference when we have a good sleep and our body get refreshed after a good deep sleep. Therefore, it should be known that even we are not now, while we are making bodily movements, we shall discuss it when we come to the lessons of Vinyati. The influence of Chitta on the Rupa is also very obvious, because we make bodily movements according to our desires. For instance, while we think to lift our hand, it is not that the hand is moving downwards. If it is so, then it is a huge problem if such a thing happens. So we know that our body behaves according to our mind. It doesn't contradict with our intentions. When we want to sit, our body doesn't stand. Our body doesn't walk. So what does it mean? Is obviously our body behaves according to the Rupa. And as the Theravadians interpret this is how Chitta is producing Chittaja Rupas and controlling the body. Controlling doesn't mean that it has obvious control all over the body, but the body behaves according to the Chitta. And in the bridge, the connection between these two is made by Chittaja Rupas. But not only while on such occasions that the effects of Chitta is obvious, but also while we are at sleep or while we are doing some other work or while we are sitting or resting, even at that moment, Chittaja Rupas arise within our body. And that can be verified by the fact that when our mind changes, the nature of the mind changes, the entire body, we can see the effects of this change. So what does it mean? There is some sort of a relationship between the Chitta and the matter. And that is because of Chittaja Rupas according to the teachings. Another is the Pacchajata Pacchaya, but the effects that we see are because of Chittaja Rupas. So we have to keep in mind, Chitta is not only producing Chittaja Rupas in its proximity, locally not in its proximity, but the entire body. Our bodies, now our postures. For instance, while I'm giving a speech, I'm not always thinking to stand, but automatically, because I'm thinking about what I'm saying, what I'm going to say on the next moment, or how I organize this lecture, what is going to be said, and what did I miss. All is going in my mind, and how did I convey my message. This is what is psychologically going inside the lecturer. But still he stands still. He has no intention of maintaining its posture. The Theravadians interpret that this is because of the Chittaja Rupas, while my consciousness, if this is the consciousness, is aiming, there is an effort to speak. There is an effort to speak. The entire consciousness mental factors are dedicated or focused in accomplishing this task of speaking. Right? Speaking. At the same time, our body, my body, the posture is also maintained. Unconsciously maintained. How this happens? How could this happen? That is because of the Chittaja Rupas produced by these Chittas. These Chittaja Rupas contains lots of Vayo Dhatu. So it is capable of holding the posture, not letting it to fall down, not letting the body to fall down. It maintains the posture. Though the thing is, we are giving a different attention. Our attention is to speak. But even we being not aware of that, our postures, now this posture was attained. Now why did I stand? Because I was, for example, I was sitting before. I stood because of my consciousness. Intention was there. Consciousness was there. So with the intention, with all the material interaction between the immaterial and the material, I stood up. So after standing, I'm now thinking of giving this lecture. My attention is to speak. But at the same time, this consciousness by which I speak, that is the point here. The consciousness with which I speak can maintain this bodily posture. How could this happen? That is by producing Chittaja Rupas. So producing Chittaja Rupas is not a conscious activity. It happens naturally. Sometimes for bodily movements, yes, we have an intention to move. So based on Chittaja Rupas do arise because of the intention, the relevant Chittaja Rupas arise in my hand or in the entire body, and they are moved towards that direction based on our intention. So that we shall learn later. When the intention is to lift the hand, Chittaja Rupas also are pushed towards that direction. So we call, there is a relationship between the Chittaja Rupas and the mentalities, and that relationship is maintained by Viññati. We shall learn them later. Viññati. So the thing is, even we are not, now on such occasions we may see that there is an intentional arousing of Chittaja Rupas. But actually what happens is, when the intention to move arises, Chittaja Rupas are generated by it without it's not such an act that I produce Chittaja Rupas. When the intention is there, Chittaja Rupa arises. Now when we rub a match in a matchbox, the fire would arise. So likewise, when we have an intention to move, based on the intention, Chittaja Rupas arise and the body moves. That is what is happening here. So in the same way, now in that case we had an intention to move. Now here we are, our intention is to speak. So while we are making a speech, our mouth and the related areas has to be moved, and a proper sound has to be uttered. At the same time, those chittas which are producing the speech, while it is producing the speech, this is another point, it is doing a one activity. Naturally, the rupas that arise in the all around the body is capable of maintaining the posture. Some Chittaja Rupas are not capable of doing that. But some Chittas, though they are not capable of producing Chittaja Rupas that could maintain a posture, but still Chittaja Rupas do arise. Even while we are at sleep. So the point here is, we should keep in mind that whenever these 75 consciousness arise in the Panchavokara realm, except on these two occasions of Patisandhi and Chuti, these consciousness do produce Chittaja Rupas all over the body, even at the root of hair. But not in the outside area, the hair that has come out from the body. Only till the root of hair. So the entire body is affected by these Chittaja Rupas. Another simile is given in the commentaries. When a mushroom comes out, for example, when a mushroom shoots out from the ground, we consider this the mushroom, it comes with some soil on it. Because it comes out like carrying some soil on its top. So likewise, whenever a mushroom comes up, it comes up with some soil in its head, on its head. So likewise, whenever these 75 consciousness arises, except on those two occasions in the Panchavokara realm, they arise together with Chittaja Rupas. Always, that is the phenomenon. phenomenon. So it is not something that that is within our control. Now another example is breathing. According to the teachings, I shall do a special lecture, a one-day lecture on this breathing, on this topic of breathing, because the explanations found in Theravada seems a little bit strange when we consider about our modern understanding about breathing. Anyway, breathing is considered to be an activity done by the consciousness. It's a chittaja rūpa. Anapana, asasa pasasa are chittaja rūpa. Maybe it is the movement of the body, or sometimes it has been explained as the air that is produced. But when we consider it as the air, the huge problems do occur in terms of Abhidhamma. I shall be discussing it in a separate lecture. Now think, if we consider breathing as an chittaja activity or rūpa that arises due to chitta. If breathing is an activity arises due to chitta, we can see the breathing is something that we can do either intentionally or it happens naturally. While I'm talking, I never think about breathing, right? While we are at sleep, we never think about breathing. We are at sleep, but breathing happens. Automatically it happens. Think about the other chittaja rūpas in the same manner. We are not considered about the chittaja rūpas, but chittaja rūpas do arise again and again in our body. Again and again in our body. So maybe this notion has been arrived by the Theravadians looking at how chitta is affecting the body, because it's obvious whenever the mind changes, our body changes. Even while we are at meditation, if some thoughts, lustful thoughts or anger thoughts, he or she did this to me, and why he or she did this, and all these thoughts come up, we can see a drastic change in our body. Instantly that change is felt. Instantly that change is felt. Temperature increases. Sometimes the body starts to shiver. And in some occasions it gets erected like straight. Now, if a good concentration, suddenly our mind jumps into a higher concentration. What happens? We start to sit still and erect. Our bodies get erected. So likewise, we can see obvious effect on the body by the chitta. So either it has to be like consciousness is making some mysterious effect on the rūpa, or it is the consciousness produces certain rūpa and makes an effect on the body. So these are the two possible explanations, because we see if we assume that if we consider that there is a special element called consciousness, non-material element, and we obviously have a material body, and we can see the body changes according to the mentalities, according to our mind. So either it is the mind has a certain capacity to directly affect the body and make movements, or in an intermediate stage, as an intermediate stage, consciousness produces chittaja rūpa and causes the body to and affects the body. So Theravadians have taken this path. Theravadians have taken this path. And there's another stage in between. While we are making deliberate intentional activities, these chittaja rūpas, for instance, this is something that we shall discuss in future lectures, chitta and the rūpa. It should be either chitta is directly affecting the rūpa, but Theravada are of the opinion chitta, the body, chitta produces chittaja rūpas and then affects the body. Then during our physical movements, deliberate physical movements, chitta, the rūpas act according to the chitta. So this is due to viññati. Chitta rūpas arise due to chitta, but on special occasions they behave according to the chitta. The relation, there is a sort of some effect, like some imprint of the idea of chitta in some chittaja rupas. I would call it like an imprint. We shall talk about it when we come to the chittaja vinyatis. Now, this is what is happening. So, instead of saying the chitta is directly affecting rupa, like Descartes said, Theravadians say chitta produces chitta rupas and affects the kaya or body or rupa. Right? So, these are the points. Now, chitta rupas, in terms of ultimate realities, there are 15 chitta rupas, which we shall discuss later, one by one. These are the 15 chitta rupas that are found in Theravada teaching. So, we discuss few points here. Chittas produce 15 types of chittaja rupas accordingly. Then chitta is not producing chittaja rupas only at its proximity, but in the entire body. In the entire body. And this is a phenomenon that happens even while we are not aware of it. Actually, it is not something that is under our control. Not something that is under our control. Whenever the 75 consciousness arise in the Panchavokara realm, except on those two occasions, they always produce chitta rupas on the body, in the body. And example is the mushroom. Whenever the mushroom arises comes out from the ground, it brings up some soil on it. So likewise, whenever consciousness arises, it arises producing some chitta rupas, and these chitta rupas do affect the body. Then the next day we move on to a new topic called chittaja kalapas. Chittaja kalapas. So these 15 chittaja rupas are found in 8 types of kalapa. 8 types of kalapa. In Abhidhammatta Sangaha, we find 6. But adding something found in Visuddhimagga, we make it 8. That is also mentioned in Paramatta Dipani. I shall explain them next day. What is this additional 2? Chittaja, Saddha Navaka is there. Saddha Navaka. Altogether, so most of you have studied, maybe you have studied as 6 Chittaja Kalapas. But actually, there are, according to Theravadins, there are 8 Chittaja Kalapas. So these 15 rupas are found in 8 kalapas. Different combinations are there. Various combinations are there. All these 8 are found only in the bodies of living beings, because chitta doesn't produce chitta rupas, something in inanimate things, right? So these 8 kalapas, so chitta rupas, 15 are found in 8 types of kalapas. And the next point, we shall discuss them later on next day. I'll also give you a handout for that, which I have already prepared. So these chittaja rupas is the bridge between the consciousness and the body. Consciousness and the body. The obvious question that the philosophers have is, how could immaterial thing affects the body, and how could the extended body affects the immaterial mentality? So instead of saying that they do directly affect according to Theravada as well, but especially in physical, when we are making physical movements, the chitta is producing chittaja rupas and affects the body. Right? So in a future lecture, we also, these chittaja rupas do play a huge role in our lives. These chittaja rupas is a reason for karaka ditti, the wrong view of a doer, that I do actions according to my will. Then they are related to bliss and suffering. Suffering caused by kilesas. One suffering of kilesas is the effects of kilesas upon the body. Bliss, we can see it in jhanas. When Buddha said the bliss of jhanas, there are 2 types of blisses. The mental bliss and the physical bliss. In sutras he has mentioned how the entire body is soaked in happiness or bliss due to the jhana. and that is due to the Chittaja Rupas. This is due to Chittaja Rupas. And Chittaja Rupas are related to our karma as well. Karma. A being's karma is decided. Now, physical and verbal actually. Verbal and kaya and vachi kamma in Pali we call. Kaya, vachi kamma. How do we decide whether the kaya kamma belongs to me or not? That is by our vinyati is produced. If the vinyati means our chittaja rupas and their intimation, if they are produced by a certain person's conscious, if for example, for me to accumulate a karma, that activity has to be done by chittaja rupas produced by my own consciousness. Why does it matters? Now, another point is, there is a huge question that can be raised during the possessions. Some beings are possessed by non-humans, and non-humans do certain crimes. Who get the karma? According to the literature, is the non-human, not the human who has been possessed. The possessor gets the karma. And how to decide it? One way to think about is, whose vinyati or whose chittaja rupas produced this activity. That is another way of thinking it. But there are some other opinions as well that can lead to a good discussion. So karma, chittaja rupas do play a huge role in our bodily and verbal karmas. It has a huge effect on our view of a doer and about the bliss of jhana, bliss and the suffering, spiritual bliss and suffering caused by defilement. So therefore, chittaja rupas has a huge influence in the doctrine which we cannot deny or ignore. So therefore, our lectures will extend as more than you would have imagined. So there will be some unique topics described in future. So today I'm gave a very short lecture on chittaja rupas. I didn't want to go into the kalapas because I couldn't provide the handout due to some issue in my computer. So next week we'll have a full discussion about the chittaja kalapa. So today's lecture was about these 15 rupas that are produced by chitta, and to show something that we should keep in mind is chitta is not producing rupas around its proximity but in the entire body, even at the root of the hair. And also this activity of producing chittaja rupas happens even while we are not aware of that, even while we are at sleep. And those 75 consciousness arising in the Panchavokara realm, except those two occasions of Patisandhi and Chuti, always produce chittaja rupas. They arise bringing or producing chittaja rupas like mushroom coming up from the earth having some soil on its top. So these were the main points that I discussed today. So this all shows now the non-self phenomenon is what is being elaborated in all these lectures. Chitta arises together due to this chitta being the cause, some material things arise in our body, and these are the effects. We call them chittaja rupas. They are not self, they are not produced by a self. When the chitta arises, whether we like or not, rupas do arise. So for instance, we may not like to have a bad sensation in our body, but if the anger arises, or lobha or kilesa, defilements arises in us, you cannot prevent this effect on the body. So what does it mean? Chitta and chittaja rupas are causally related, and there is no self govern in there. So hope you got the basic ideas of today's lecture, and I give you the opportunity to ask questions. Yeah, is Sale Punyachari here? Or yes, okay. Can you take the forum? Yes, please. Can you do the moderation? Okay. So you are in which name? China. What is your name here?
No.
Punyachari. Name is there. Okay, right. Okay, right.
Yeah. Okay. So friends, if you have any questions, you may raise your hand or put in the chat box. So our brother Kamajaya Bodhi, he has questions. So please go ahead.
Thank you. May I ask my question in person?
Yes.
My question is, I couldn't listen to all the lecture in between. 20 minutes I couldn't, around 20 minutes I couldn't listen to. But my question is, mind element or manodhatu and mind consciousness element, manovinyana, both are hard base. And there are 76 chittas there, no? Except.
You mean Mano Vijnana? Yes, 76.
Mano Vijnana and Manodhatu both are heart based. That's my question. Whether they are heart based.
Yes, Mano Dhatu and Mano Vijnana Dhatu both associate the heart base, and there are 79 consciousness.
79.
79, right? So 89 minus 10 Vijnana becomes 79, and out of 79, 3 is Mano Dhatu. The remaining 76 is Mano Vijnana Dhatu, right? So let me explain. So Mano Vijnana Dhatu and Mano Dhatu, right? Then it doesn't say that all Mano Vijnana and Mano Dhatu is always heart base, associating heart base. It always associates heart base, but not that Mano Vijnana Dhatu always associate heart base. When it arises in the Arupa realm, it doesn't associate a heart base. It doesn't associate a heart base. So out of the 76 Mano Vijnana Dhatu, 76 Mano Vijnana Dhatu, 74 consciousness, Arupa Vipaka never associate a heart base. Never associate a heart base. There is no fundamental saying all Mano Vijnana Dhatu must associate heart base. No. No, there is no such a fundamental. It says Mano Vijnana Dhatu yang rupang nissaya Mano Vijnana Dhatucha Mano Dhatuta Mano Vijnana Dhatucha vattanti. So based on which Rūpa Mano Dhatu and Mano Vijnana Dhatu arises. That doesn't mean that Mano Vijnana always associate a heart base. Out of the 76, now the 89 minus 10 Vijnana, we get 79 Mano Vijnana, 79 Mano Vijnana. This 79 Mano Vijnana is divided as 3 Mano Dhatu and 76 Mano Vijnana Dhatu, right? So this is a different classification. Again, this 79 can be divided as 4 Arupa Vipaka and 75 remaining, right? These 75 has the capacity to produce Rūpa only while in Pancha Vokara realm except Patisandhi and Chuti moments. So if you want to combine these two, right, what we should do is, out of this now 3 is going to Mano Dhatu, out of 76 Mano Vijnana Dhatu, you may take 4 Arupa apart, right, they don't produce Chittaja Rūpa, 72 remaining produce Chittaja Rūpa again in the Panchavokara realm and except Patisandhi and Chuti. So this 72 or 70, it's better to come with 75 including these 3 because they always produce Chittaja Rūpas. So this 75 among these 75, some always produce Chitta Rūpa because they never arise in the Arupa realm. And they never arise as the Patisandhi Chuti Chittas. So, but some always produce, some of them, when they arise in Arupa realm, they do not produce Chittaja Rūpas, but while they arise in the Panchavokara realm, they produce Chittaja Rūpa. So we can go into a detailed explanation like out of these 75 who always produce and who sometimes, and so likewise Arupa Vipakas never produce Chittaja Rūpas. If you get into this 79, now 18 out of 89, Chitta, 10 Vijnana, and 4 arupa never produce Chittaja Rūpa. Then out of the remaining 75, the chittas that arise in the arupa realm can sometimes produce and sometimes does not. Then the chittas that never arise in arupa realm always. Also, the chittas that doesn't arise in the arupa realm, arise in the arupa realm, and also the chittas that do the patisandhi chuti functions. There are 2 categories here. Chittas that do the patisandhi chuti function and the chittas that arise in the arupa realm sometimes produce Chittaja Rūpas. Chittas that never arise in the arupa realm and chittas that never do the patisandhi and chuti functions, they always produce Chittaja Rūpas. Right? So, if we categorize them, for instance, 2 dosamula chittas, they never arise in the arupa realm. Then out of ahetuka, 10 vijnana is here. Out of the remaining 8, we take out 2 santirana. So 6 ahetuka. Because ahetuka, 2 santirana can arise as patisandhi and chuti chitta. So sometimes they do not produce Chittaja Rūpas. So what are these 6? 2 sampatichana, then 1 somanassa santirana because it never does patisandhi chuti functions, 2 avajjana, and 1 hasituppada. These are the 6, right? Then we have 8 Mahāvipāka also sometimes, because they do not arise in the arupa realm, but they arise as patisandhi chittas. Then 5 rūpāvachara kusala, because they never arise in the arupa realm. 5 rūpāvachara kirya, they never arise in the arupa realm. Then 1 sotapatti magga chitta. These chittas, we have 8, 18, 19. These 19 chittas always produce Chittaja Rūpas. Then the chittas that can sometimes produce are 8 lobhamula chittas, 2 mohamula. Dosamula never arise in the Brahma realms. Then 2 santirana, upekka santirana, UP. 2 upekka santiranas, while they do the patisandhi chuti functions, they do not produce Chittaja Rūpa. Upekka, UP santirana. Then 8 Mahāvipāka, right? 5 Rūpāvachara Vipāka, because since they can do the patisandhi chuti functions. Now the chittas that can arise in the arupa realm, 8 lobhamula, 2 mohamula, 8 Mahakusala, MK, 8 Mahakirya, KIR, Kirya, then 4 Arupa Kusala, 4 Arupa Kirya, and upper 7 Lokuttara. Right, so we have altogether 10, 26, 30, 34, 34, 7, 41. We have 15, 41, 15, 56, right? Right, 56. So these are the 14 chittas never produce Chittaja Rūpas. 56 chittas sometimes produce Chittaja Rūpas. 19 will always produce. Out of the 56, 15 does sometimes produce. Why? Because when they do the patisandhi and chuti functions, they do not produce Chittaja Rūpas. All other occasions they do produce. Because these chittas do not arise in the arupa realm, but still when they arise in the panchavokara, while they are doing the patisandhi chuti functions, they do not produce Chittaja Rūpas. Then 41 chittas sometimes produce Chittaja Rūpas. Why? Because when they arise in the arupa realm, they do not produce Chittaja Rūpas. That was the reason. So 14, 56 is 70. 70 plus 19 is 89. So this is another categorization. So we should not mix them with the Mano Vijnana Mano Dhatu. Mano Dhatu is found here. Mano Dhatu is found here. Right? So they always produce Chittaja Rupas. This would be the categorization. Is it okay? Clear?
Thank you. Theravada, I got the clear. Thank you.
Thank you.
Theravada.
Thank you. Good morning. May I have the permission to ask a question?
Yes.
Someday? Actually, my first question is about when you say that the Pratisandhi Chitta and the Chuti Chitta is not capable of producing any, but it all in the same karma vijnana or the same bhavanga santati. So in that, usually in deep sleep state, when the bhavanga is working, the body cannot keep its postures, but still it seems to be producing some chittaja rupas. Am I right on this?
Yes. Did you participate in the lecture that I gave us when one complete lecture on why Patisandhi Chitta and Chuti Chitta is not producing Chittaja Rupas?
I do not remember that, but I just read it.
That was the not the last one before last. One before last, I gave a complete lecture on why Patisandhi Chitta and Chuti Chitta is not producing Chittaja Rupas, with the evidences of the doctrine and all, the reasons and arguments and all. A complete lecture on this.
Right. I will listen to that and find those things out. But during the rest of the life, the bhavanga chitta seems to be produced.
Yeah, that's what I say. It's all chittas except Patisandhi and Chuti. So while we had deep sleep as well.
Yes. Then actually my next question was, in addition to the chittaja, the karma vijnana being present, in the form of either from Patisandhi to Chuti and the bhavanga, something else seems to be causing the functioning of the santati, because you explained last time about the Rūpa tanha and the arupa tanha. So that also seems to be, because when you add that explanation of the Pratisandhi Chitta function becomes much more meaningful, because then you can extend easily to the arupa loka as well as asanya loka. Because there what is missing is probably one of the two, Rūpa tanha or arupa tanha, based on where it is. But in Panchavokara Bhava and the sensual world, it's always both are present. So usually what we get in the books and that is Pila, Atua and Tika, in all that is in relation to the sensual world in most cases. Am I right?
Yes, Chittaja Rupas do not arise in Arupa or Asanya realms, and there is no direct relationship between Chittaja Rupas and the craving. But what we discussed last week is the production of Kammaja Rupas and the Vipaka Chitta Chetasikas, Patisandhi Vipaka and Kammaja Rupas. If someone has suppressed Rūpa Tanha, he would not get Kammaja Rupas in that life. If someone has suppressed Nama Tanha, they would not get Vipaka Chitta Chetasikas at the Patisandhi moment. So as a result, the entire life would be without Nama. If Rūpa Tanha has been suppressed, there will be no Kammaja Santati. But still Nama will be there because Nama Tanha has not been suppressed. Now the Rūpa Tanha, since there is no Kammaja Santati, the remaining chittas are not capable of producing Chittaja Rupas in that life. That is what is happening. Even while, for example, in our cases, we have a Kammaja Santati starting from our Patisandhi. So our chittas do produce Chitta Rupas. So Chitta Rupas do have support from the Chitta itself and also the Kammaja Santati that has been existing. Kammaja Santati also has a supportive element to the Chitta Rupas. Without them, Chitta Rupas cannot arise, and Chitta is directly related to that. So even a person who has completely eradicated Kama Tanha or Rupa Tanha during that life, Chitta Rupas will still occur, still keep on happening. So there is no such a direct relationship between Rupa Tanha and Chitta Rupas. We can show a linear relationship. Only when there is Rupa Tanha active, Kammaja Rupas will occur in a Patisandhi moment. Only when the Kammaja Santati is there, the remaining Chittas are able of producing Chittaja Rupas in that life. Patisandhi Chitta doesn't produce Chittaja Rupa because it's a different case, because it lacks some support. But from the Bhavanga, second Bhavanga, all the Chittas, even while we are at sleep or during the all process, produces Chittaja Rupas. Why is that? Because there is already a Kammaja Santati existing, started from the Patisandhi moment. So if there was no Kammaja Santati, no Chittaja Rupas. Why there is no Kammaja Santati? Because the Rupa Tanha has been subdued. So likewise, we can see a linear relationship between Rupa Tanha and Chittaja Rupa. Yes. But if, now for instance, we obtain, because I had Rupa Tanha not suppressed in the previous life, so I got a Kammaja Santati from my birth, and Chittaja Rupas are happening during my existence. Imagine if I become an Arahant in this life, for example, Arahant, and eradicate the Rupa Tanha fully, but still Arahant's Chittaja Rupas Chitta would still produce Chittaja Rupas during the process.
Yeah, that's a very good explanation, and that fits in. But with that explanation, I can extend it to the Pratisandhi Chitta also, because at the moment of Pratisandhi Chitta, there's no Kammaja Santati, Rupa Santati present, because it may be happening simultaneously, Sahajata, the art piece, but at the inception, when the Pratisandhi Chitta is beginning, and there's no Purijata Pachya can take Purijata Pachya support can come from previously occurring or previously already present existing Kammaja Rupa.
So that is why I mentioned this in the previous lectures. Someone can argue in that way as well. I mentioned that why Patisandhi Chitta is not producing Chittaja Rupa. The explanation given is it doesn't get the support of a hard base that has been existing before it. That was the explanation. And another explanation can be brought up is, in order to produce Chittaja Rupas, Patisandhi Chitta also needs the support of a already existing Kammaja Santati. So the Kammaja Santati is happening simultaneously at the same time, so it is not capable. So both these fundamentals can be brought, but in commentaries we discuss only one fundamental, that is the Patisandhi Chitta is not gaining enough support from the hard base. The argument of the explanation of the commentary is, should the Patisandhi Chitta, if the Patisandhi Chitta gained if the Patisandhi Chitta gained the support of was arising on a hard base that had already existed before, then it has to produce Chittaja Rupas. So still it matches. So when we say it is associating a hard base that is arising together with it, not a hard base that has arisen before, it means there is no Kammaja Santati. That is it also applies. If there was a hard base before, it means there is a Kammaja Santati before, that has occurred before. So both these answers are possible regarding Patisandhi Chitta's incapability of producing Chittaja Rupas.
Right. So that explains that. But then I have two more questions, if you have permission to ask, if you give me the permission to ask. And one where I am really looking at what you said about possessing from a different Buddha or a different invisible living being, possessing the physical body of a human and then acting So in that position, that possessed, I should not call it soul, but the possessed santati takes over the functioning of the physical body, but it is unable to take over the functioning of the mental santati. Am I right?
I shall be because there are two opinions on this within Theravada teachings. I will be giving a complete separate lecture on that in another in coming weeks. So we shall discuss that in that lecture, because according to some teachers, which are mentioned in the sub-commentaries, some part of the consciousness is prevented by the possessor, and according to some not. So there are opinions. So we need to discuss, we need to analyze this in order to answer that question.
Second part of the question is really, but
I have done it. I have done that lecture in Sinhalese actually. Yeah, please go.
Great. I will try to find it and listen to it. Second part of the question is really, anyway, the possessed santati can move the physical body, means it can produce certain chittaja rupas.
Yeah, that also will be discussed. That needs to be discussed. I give two opinions of the sub-commentators, and then I give a third possible opinion as well, because how this body is moved, whose chittaja rupas are occurring, and whose vinyati is causing the activity. So I'll not go into this topic, because then I have to explain for a few minutes in detail. In English, we shall talk it when it comes to the lecture, or you can also have Amanussa. The topic would be in the Sinhalese series, Amanussa Avesayakadi Chittaja Rupawala Pavatma, something like that.
Yeah, I'm trying to go through that entire series like one by one, little by little.
Okay.
So I will look for it.
Okay.
But the last question is really about mixing the scientific knowledge with what is taught in Dhamma. That is generally what we learn in physics, chemistry, everywhere material is something which is substantial, which can be felt, which can be weighed, which has a mass likewise. But of course, again, somebody can argue with today's quantum physics and quantum mechanics, that is also changing, because there are particles without weight, without mass. These are only energy particles. So why I am mentioning that is actually, now when you look at the 28 different the forms or the Rūpas which we look at in Abhidhamma, only the ones which contain Shuddhasthaka can have some kind of a mass. And the rest is actually weightless, so without a mass. So Chittaja Rūpa all fall into that category. And but it is capable of working with the Rūpas which has a mass. So maybe Chittaja Rūpa has a different form of energy which is not explained in scientific knowledge yet. And that may be the reason. So is that hypothesis has any basis? That is my question.
Then actually they do have Avinibbhoga Rūpas, Chittaja Rūpas. Every materiality have Avinibbhoga Rūpa. Yeah, scientifically it doesn't have a mass, but it goes in the entire like maximum speed. It doesn't have an inertia mass even, I think. So to my knowledge. So I prefer, like, if we go into the explanation of how the bodily movements are made, then we can come into this, we can postulate a hypothesis on such an event, because first we need to find out how the body moves. So when we come to the Kaya Vinyati, I shall be talking about this. Then it's better with the grounding, the knowledge that we have in the doctrine, then it will be much easier to discuss about this issue. So as you said, Rupa Kalapas are different to each other, and surely they have different capacities, and I don't know how much we can match them with the energy carrying particles, because energy carrying particles are found in the outside world as well. So but surely these, if you are going to match these two, this seems to be something of a strange particle that suddenly pops up in our body and makes the movements. So I prefer like we come into that discussion after, at least after we finish the Kaya Vinyati lesson. So then we can, because next day I'll be going the categorization of the Chittaja Rupas. Then I'll be explaining about the Chittaja Santatis. Then I directly move into the capacity of Chittaja Rupas, then move into the Vinyati. So in the Vinyati 2 lessons, I'll be discussing how the movements are made and what is the argument of the Theravadians, how the energy is made, how the force is being made, and it's an accumulation actually. It's not that the one chitta is capable of making a movement. So I think we'll come to that after we have discussed about the Vinyatis.
Yeah, why I really asked that question was I recently read about the robo arm being robo arm is working, but the control is by the mind of the person who is standing by. So that again is through Chittaja Rūpa, and that's the only way I can think of when you look at it from a Dhamma point of view. So anyway, thank you very much. Again, you are showing your ability to handle a very, very complicated Dhamma and a subject which is not easily explainable. So probably that is the Buddha Vishaya.
Okay, sadhu, sadhu.
Thank you very much,
Okay.
and much merits to you, Bhante.
Theravada Sana.
Thank you so much, Bhante. There is no more question. Thanks to Bhante's by the explanation. So Bhante, you may conclude today's class.
Okay, right. Thank you for joining. And today we talked about the Chittaja Rupas. Briefly, like about a few points. We discussed just few points. Then next day we'll be talking about Chittaja Kalapas and how about these 8 Kalapas are found in our body, which will be a quite interesting lecture. So wish you all the best, and may all of you be able to attain Nibbana. By this, may you be able to gain Dhamma knowledge and attain Nibbana as soon as possible, and may this merit also helps for the sustaining of Buddha Sasana. Buddha Sasanang Chirantithatu, Buddha Sasanang Chirantithatu, Buddha Sasanang Chirantithatu, Sadhu, Sadhu, Sadhu.